So welcome everybody. We're doing something a little different this week. The bench doctor's on vacation. He's decided that Las Vegas is a better place to be, and he's going to shoot machine guns with his son. Hopefully not at his son. And then he'll be back probably 2 weeks from now because we've got a real special treat tonight. During our annual meeting, we had several panels, and during those panels, one of the things that came up is we really need to have something to talk about various disabilities and firearms and how folks with disabilities navigate the system, navigate the firearms, and generally get their boom on, as it were. And tonight, what we've got is we've got a couple of panelists. We're going to spend our time talking about physical disabilities today, and then we are going to, I believe, next week. And let me read this off so I don't screw it up. Oh, good Lord, it went all the way up to the top there. Psych, neuro, and mental disabilities. So this week it's physical disabilities. And we've got Mark and Nate. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves because I hate pronouncing Mark's last name. And I only just met Nate a few days ago. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mark and Nate. Danielle's going to be running the questions. She helped us run stuff over the national meeting. So if you have questions, drop them in the chat on the Zoom or drop them in the chat on the Discord server. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you don't know where those things are, send one of us a message on Facebook and or wherever, and we'll find you and get you in there. So without further ado, Mark, it is all yours to introduce everybody. And then Danielle, I'm going to shut the hell up and get off screen.
All right. Thanks a lot, Ed. As Ed said, my name is Mark Okniansky. You can just call me Mark. We are here to talk about the intersection of disabilities and how that interplays with firearms, aside from just our normal everyday life. There are 4 of us on the panel today, and I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves. I'm going to start with Karen. There we go. So introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your interaction of how disabilities interact with your everyday life and with firearms.
Hi everyone, I'm Karen. I'm a new LGC member, also new to the community in terms of firearms, but a long-term disabled person, although it's been mostly neuro and psych issues. So I'm going to speak more next week than I am this week. However, I was in a bad car accident about 3 or 4 years ago, and some of those things are coming back to affect me physically, and so that's also part of the reason why I became interested in thinking about, and along with COVID and the current political situation, trying to think about how to better protect myself and my family, and also think about broader progressive politics as well. My day job, I am a professor at a progressive university on the West Coast, and so it's hard for me to probably talk about that. I do disability studies, and so I think a lot about disabilities and about how society disables us, and about adaptive equipment as well. Since being in the Bay Area, I'm very linked to the disability community here, but I don't think a whole lot of people have thought much about the intersection of disabilities and firearms. I think on the whole, from what I found, is that the firearm community thinks a whole lot more about these issues, about disability, than disability thinks about firearms. So, the pistol brace that everyone now has on the AR-15 pistols originally comes out of someone making literally a pistol brace for a friend who had limited arm power. And so it's coming out of sort of disability adaptation. But on the most part, I don't think people in the disability community think too much about it. So I'm really glad to be part of this bigger conversation.
And we'll go to Deb. Deb is also more so going to speak next week, but I figured we would introduce everyone today. So Deb, tell us about yourself.
So I'm Deb Yamanaka. I've been a member of the Liberal Gun Club since shortly after learning how to shoot 8 years ago. I was raised around guns, but not a big fan of guns. Despite that, was always a strong supporter of the Second Amendment because I'm a strong supporter of the Constitution. And that has a little bit to do with where I began my career, which was as a public servant. So I, much like Karen, know a little bit more about the mental side of things I, unlike some, don't like the term disability, because the service dog who walks with me everywhere I go does not is no different to me than a person who takes blood pressure medicine. It's just that what helps me navigate certain situations I don't handle well otherwise is a white dog. And so, you know, for me, navigating gun ownership post PTSD diagnosis, which I actually didn't, you know, I got diagnosed after I learned to shoot, but post-diagnosis has added extra challenge because my symptoms would not appear on the outside if they were anything else. In my day job, I run a technology company in the greater Washington, D.C. area, and I'm one of not very many women in the country who actually do that, and we do it successfully. So not only am I navigating the firearms community and a lot of the misperceptions around well-managed, hypersensitivity and hyper-awareness associated with PTSD, but I also have a dog that appears whenever I'm speaking publicly or at conferences or whatever. So I'm dealing in a good way. You know, I'm putting a different kind of face on success for women who are, and to be clear, 1 in 4 who've experienced sexual violence. And so that's my story. And I think I know probably better than many the importance of a woman being able to defend themselves, and not just women, but others who are sometimes victimized for reasons that are not their fault. Actually, no victim is to blame. But so I'm here for that reason.
All right. We look forward to talking about PTSD and how that plays into firearms ownership and self-defense next week. And we'll move on to Nate. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Nate. Oh, we don't have audio. Well, Nate, we can't hear you, so why don't you work on that? I'll talk about myself a little bit while you figure that out.
Okay, can you hear me now or no?
Now I hear you. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't know what's up with that. My Bluetooth was working good a minute ago. Now it's kind of messing up again. Anywho, yeah, I'm Nate Tilton. Nice to meet y'all. I've been shooting for a long time. Recently got back into it. I'm a disabled vet. I'm also a retired federal air marshal. I used to shoot all the time until my service-connected disabilities caught up with me, and I just kind of stopped shooting. I've only recently joined the LGC and also back into shooting again. So learning how to adapt my shooting strategies has been a bit of a struggle, but definitely quite a bit of an adventure. I also am a lab manager focused on at a disabled makerspace, focusing on how to make technologies more adaptable for disabled folks. And so that's one of the things that would be pretty cool to also experiment with different sorts of firearms and different weaponry for disabled peoples.
That's great. I really want to learn more about the makerspace and what you're doing for disabled folk. I think I can be a beneficiary of that. So some of you know me, some of you don't. My name is Mark. I was born disabled. I don't have fingers on my left hand here. It's just a birth defect, and so. While Nate's disability was somewhat acquired and progressive, mine has been this way since I was born. So we would have a different perspective as to adapting to firearms and making them work for us. I got into firearms, I want to say in 2012 or so. I had shot before that at the range, but I didn't own anything until about then. And the reason I got it was something that was mentioned earlier was that original arm brace that was created for a friend. Well, that arm brace was then taken to the ATF and approved by the ATF to be used in place of a stock. So why is that important? Back in 2012, AR pistols in California were still legal. It was a loophole. They had banned short-barreled rifles, but an AR pistol wasn't technically within the definition of a short-barrel rifle at the time. They've closed that loophole since. But my friend in law school, he called me and he says, they're going to ban the AR pistol, and with this AR pistol, because you can't have a stock, you can have this arm brace, and I think it'd be perfect for you because you can strap it to your arm and it'll help stabilize the firearm. So that ended up becoming my first gun. I actually have that here with me. We'll go through some of that later. But me personally, I'm an attorney. I do personal injury primarily in real estate work, but I have been a LGO and LGC member for almost a year now, and I really love the community here. So we're going to move on to more of what we're here to talk about. And so today we're talking about physical disabilities and how they interact with our ability to manipulate a firearm, to clear a firearm, and just self-defense in general. Let me back up. Another thing that initially got me into wanting to learn how to shoot is I used to do Krav Maga, and for those who don't know, that's the Israeli fighting art. I say art, but it's just basically street fighting. It was a martial art developed by the Israeli military that was supposed to be easy and quick to teach the troops, and highly effective. It's kind of an amalgam of a lot of different martial arts. And one of the things that we would learn is how to disarm somebody with a gun. And in doing that, I asked myself, what's the point of disarming somebody with a gun if you don't know how to use the gun? You're just going to take it away from them and it's basically a weight. So that's what got me into it. So growing up, obviously, I've had to adapt to everything anyone has been able to do, from going to school and writing and playing games as a kid, and to like I said, going to Krav Maga. And even in those situations, there wasn't anyone that says, well, if you don't have a hand, here's how you do the technique. So it's always been about figuring out a way to perform the same technique in my way, or a way that is effective. And we can go through some of those. Just thinking, we'll start with manipulation of a handgun. I'll ask you, Nate. What's changed for you in terms of being able to manipulate a handgun in normal firearms training? What's become harder for you, and how have you dealt with that?
So for me, I suffer from left-sided weakness, and so basically my left side has a bit of paralysis. So as you can imagine, trying to come up and meet your weapon, it's not really going to be very helpful. So now I'm a lot more dependent on my right side, which means that when I'm actually shooting, it's like I have to actually be really cognizant of when I'm shooting, how I'm shooting, and what I'm doing with my right and my left, even though I can't really feel my left as well. Because otherwise I can be pushing, I can be putting too much on the trigger. I can be not giving enough support on the trigger as much as I can on the left side. And next thing I know, I'm off, somewhere off the paper. As far as pistol shooting goes. With rifle shooting, now you have some differences because normally my left hand would be my support hand. So typically what I've been doing is tucking a little bit further underneath into the shoulder, and trying to rely more on bipods and tripods, which was something I wasn't really relying more on before, into adapting my rifle strategies. For shotgun, I haven't even really explored that as much yet because I'm still trying to find something for a good balance on that because of the recoil on it, since I don't really have a lot of strength in the left hand to balance that out. So that's been definitely a different strategy. Also, I normally am in a power scooter or power chair or use a cane or walker. to get around. So that's also another thing to have to strategize around, because a lot of times some ranges are not exactly disability friendly. Some of them have stairs leading down to the to the pit to be able to go shoot. Some of them in some of the indoor ranges are in the basement where they only have stairs, they don't have elevators to go down. So that can be really tricky for me to navigate those spaces. But luckily I've found certain ranges where they are accessible, or they have an easy way to get on and off the range. But then again, like I said, shooting with a cane or shooting in a power chair, that's definitely been a bit of a challenge in learning and how to overcome. But like with my cane, I might tuck it more underneath my right side a bit and support my right weight more on my right leg, because I can't really put a lot on my left. So that's definitely a tricky thing to do, especially because I always shoot from the isosceles triangle. So that's it's a different experience because I have to modify that quite a bit from what I'm used to doing.
Are you primarily, you might have said this, but are you left-handed?
No, I'm not a southpaw. I'm a righty, but I did learn to shoot ambidextrous in the air marshals with the pistols and everything, so that was good. But I'm still predominantly right-handed when it comes down to everything else, and my left is still mostly my support hand. But that was kind of the good thing about the training was back in the day they used to teach us go left, go right, go left, go right. So that was good training to have, and which I think definitely helped me in adapting my shooting strategies.
That's good stuff. Has your one-handed shooting with your dominant hand improved because of all this?
No, not really. I mean, I learned the trick of the trade for that a while ago, because I remember we used to be on the range, and I used to get frustrated because I'd just bear maul it, just have the whole bear paw on it and just shooting the whole thing. And I'm like, man, why am I so off target? And then a buddy of mine who was in Marine Recon, and he was just like, dude, just pinky up, bro. Just put your pinky up, balance it out, and just start drilling targets. And ever since then, I just put the pinky up, and people might look at me when I'm doing one-handed drills, and they're just like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just drilling the paper, because taking that pinky off gives me that balance. Because otherwise, when I'm pulling, it's just like my pinky might be pulling it off a little bit, throwing it to the right or something like that. Oh, the pinky strategy. Oh, I just put it up, just pinky up, just like I was drinking tea or something. I found that really helped quite a bit.
I'm gonna try that next time I go to the range. Just pinky up.
Yeah, it definitely helps a lot. And if you need any strategies for it, please, get with me offline. Sometimes it's good to go pinky up. Sometimes you just do the ring finger and do two up. Just whatever works for you, because you might notice that you're pulling a little bit on your pinky or your ring or even your middle finger sometimes, and you might realize that you're actually pulling down, and maybe even very slightly, but just that slight, depending on how many meters you are away, that can obviously put you off target. Just right. That little micro, just like slapping the trigger. Just that little micro slap or jerk can put the round somewhere else.
We had a question from Ben Rodman. Do you use just a regular vertical grip when you do the pinky up?
Ben, that's a great question. I do cant it a bit to the side, and I do it more like traditional rifle shooting. I know with traditional pistol shooting, pistol goes to your eye, not your eye to the pistol. But in this case, I reverse it a little bit, and almost like a rifle strategy, where I actually will bring the pistol up, but also bring my eye to match it a bit while I'm drilling, because I'll be normally shooting from a shooter's box instead of punching out, because as we know, no completely gangster to the 90-degree gangster grip, but yeah, definitely just cant it just a little bit to the side a little bit. I find helps, and then just drilling at home helps a lot. But also, like I said, bring it up here, but maintaining the shooter's box. Obviously you don't want to completely lose control, and you're not jerking it, but you're just keeping it strength in the shooter's box. If you punch all the way out, when we punch all the way out, we don't have a lot of strength, especially with a single hand. But when we're pulled in the shooter's box, we have a lot of strength here. Like if you're doing tactical drills and you're going through the building and somebody comes in, like I'm sure they taught you, Mark, in Krav Maga. It's like they come in, they try to grab your pistol. If you're in the shooter's box, they're going to have a hell of a time grabbing that thing from you. But if you're all the way out here, forget about it. You know, they're gonna flick of a wrist and they're gonna take your pistol. So that's why we go from the shooter's box and do that. Can you elaborate on punching out versus shooter box? Yeah, of course. So punching out is traditionally like, let's say if we're in our isosceles triangle and we have our nice base and everything like that, and then we punch out, like is actually when we match everything together and then we punch out. Like that's considered punching out. And some people will do that too, like when they're single-handed and they'll punch out. But then when we punch out, like you can even test it yourself. Like if you push your arm all the way out, and you can feel that you don't have a lot of strength here, like all the way out. But if you're inside, you have a lot more strength. It's like the closer you are to the center of your body, you have a lot more strength in here. And that's kind of like the shooter's box is like right in here.
So
like, that's why I considered it.
So where most people will draw and then they'll come out and they'll punch out.
Yeah.
You're saying when you're doing one-handed, you get the pinky out, tilt it a little bit, and you shoot from the shooter's box. You don't punch out.
That's it, Mark. Yep, you got it.
Right.
That's it.
Well, that's a strategy I haven't tried before. I'm gonna have to try that.
Yeah, like I said, because it was one of the things that would kick my butt on the qualifications for FAMs, and FAMs have a really high qualification standard. Like it's the only other agency that has the same standard as the Secret Service, and I would get frustrated because I'd be sitting there on the range. I'm like, man, I'm drilling these holes and I can't get it on single hand or even on left side or right side. And I was like, well, what am I doing wrong? And Marine Recon, he just was like, dude, just chill. Remember you got your strength inside. This was one of his shooting strategies that he showed me. So that sound, that seemed like it was something really helpful for me, and something helped quite a bit. Are you still relying on sights, or this is the aiming with the laser? We don't use lasers, so it's sight, pure sights. You'd be surprised, but that also depends on how far the target is too. If you're, in reality, if you're combat shooting and you're one-handed shooting at somebody and they're 50 meters away, it's going to be a tough shot no matter what you're doing. But if you're standard pistol qualifications, what is it, 10 meters, give or take, or further, 25 or further. But when you start drilling them with one-handed, is definitely, if you're down to one-handed shooting, if you're an able-bodied person and you're down to one-handed shooting, it's typically bad because normally your left side is injured or your right side is injured normally. So typically in a combat situation, it's definitely not good. But yeah. So that's typically one of the shooting strategies that I adopted and works really well.
One of the our instructors at the Liberal Gun Club, his name's Alessandro Padovani. I actually just got to train with him a couple weekends ago. And they do a lot about point shooting from close range. Like if somebody's close enough to you that they can come up on you, you don't have time to line up your sights and everything. So you're really just drawing and firing right in front of you. And so the key there is getting the grip right and just knowing your grip. And if you're gripping it right and you're pulling the trigger, or not pulling, you're pressing the trigger to the back. You're not slapping it. You do it smoothly. You're always going to hit center mass at close range. And the idea there is that there's, I know, missing a hand here, but there's a cone there. So if your target is within a certain distance, you're going to hit it no matter what. And so you could just get to firing as soon as possible. And so I get that, especially in an airplane where you're shooting close distance no matter what.
Right. And you're 100% right on that. That was actually so I remember I would ask some more senior guys, I would be like, hey, what do you recommend for an off-duty weapon? And of course everybody talks crap about 9mm, 380s, all that type of stuff. And one of my guys, one of my buddies who was a senior air marshal, he said something to me that's definitely stuck with me. He said, man, it says get the F off me gun. If it doesn't matter if it's a 380 or even a 22, If they're right up that close on you and you're pretty much hand to hand with that person already, and you just draw out and you just put rounds in them, he said it doesn't matter what it is at the end of the day, as long as they go down. And so that kind of definitely stuck with me, because a lot of people do get like, oh, it needs to be a 45, it needs to be a 40, or screw 9 mils, blah blah blah, But as long as you have something to put them down, it's like that's all. 10 millimeter or go home. Yes, I do love my SIG 220 and 10 millimeter. That is a beast. I really love that thing. But yeah, that's what one of the big things I've definitely learned is like, as long as you get the F off me gun, who cares what the caliber is, just put them down. Yeah, and that's where that stuff with the point shooting. Yeah, it's 100% right. If you draw out and you're already right here, right here, bam, like they said, like you should be already drawing out and pulling trigger as you move out, like butter, as they said,
Now,
so that's one of the things. Yeah.
I know we have some questions and we're about half an hour in, so I'm going to turn this to Danielle to give us some questions from the members and from people that want to know certain things. So Danielle, take it away.
So since we're talking about it, one of the first, we have a lot on grip problems on rifles and pistols. So I'll run through them and you can, so first, what firearms are good for people who are left-handed or one-handed or ambiflexible or who have limited upper body strength? Do you guys have any suggestions?
Sure, I'll start. Those are all very different. For left-handed folk, you're going to want something that is more ambidextrous. I think Beretta and H&K have handguns that are more accommodating to left-handed folk. And what you really want is to have like the safety and a slide release and things on the other side of the gun that would normally be there. A lot of times you can also modify your gun to make it more ambidextrous or make it more left-hand friendly. You could buy a new slide, you could buy different controls. It's a little easier, say, on like an AR-15 or something. Those are highly modifiable. You could get ambidextrous controls in basically for basically anything it does. And so it's just a matter of knowing what your limitation is, where you need the controls to be, and building the gun to those specifications. In terms of slide operation, that's a very good question. A lot of times you think, okay, smaller gun is going to be easier to manipulate or something like that, and that's actually not true. And I have an example here for that. So I've got this is a Glock 26. You can see in there it's empty. There's no magazine. Okay. Oh, sorry, no magazine. So this gun, it's a subcompact. It's a 9 millimeter, and you would think that this thing would be super easy to manipulate, right? It's not. This is actually one of the more difficult guns for me to operate, given my limitation. And I'll explain why in a second. On the other hand, I've got a Glock 23, which is the same size as a Glock 19, and again, I'm showing you that it's empty. There's nothing in there. Okay, and so this gun is really easy for me to move around, and so let me explain the difference here. So this Glock 26 here is really hard for me to pull back. I can pull it back. Locking it back, it takes some effort for me.
Can you, can you do that again and raise it up a little? You were off camera. There you go.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe
that's too close. There you go.
So see, it almost slides off my hand. It's really hard for me to get back. You'll see on here, it's a remnant of a sticker. I actually have one in my bag I can get later if anyone wants to see it, but it's a arachnid grip. That actually helps a lot. What it is, it's almost like a tar paper that goes over the top, and you see these serrations here. It gets these little tar paper strips in between the serrations, and when that's there, I can manipulate this thing with no problem because it gives me extra grip. Now let me show you why this one is so much harder to manipulate. I'm going to take it apart. So in here, you see that spring? That spring, it's much bigger it's a double spring. And they need that because there's not a lot of travel there in the slide. They need that extra tension to pop the round out. Now let me show you on the Glock 23 here, which is basically the same thing as a 19. The spring, it's a single spring, and it's a lot easier to pull back. So, you know, a lot of people will say, okay, smaller is better, but that's not necessarily true. It really depends on the spring of the gun and how it's designed. There are certain guns that are actually designed for people with grip problems. I know Smith & Wesson has a line of guns that are called the Easy guns, the Shield Easy. They have it in 9mm and 380. I know they just created a performance center version of the Easy line, and those are great. They're actually designed for really easy. You can rack the slide with your pinky. It's that easy. I've seen it done on video. I haven't actually handled it myself because I live in California. And the problem with California, it's not on our handgun roster, in fact, and so we can't get it here. But if you don't live in California, or if you're law enforcement, you can get it. And that would be an excellent gun to go to the range and say, hey, do you have this? Can I give it a try? Because it's made to be easy to load the magazines. It's made to be easy to rack the slide and otherwise manipulate with even one hand. Nate, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, that's actually some really good stuff that you were bringing up, Mark. And like you were saying, they have the Easy Grip, but they also do have like, depending on what the grip issue though is, because there are a ton of different grip issues. Like some people might have smaller hands, some people might have bigger hands. And I think that's what most grips, the different grips are made for, like the Glock Gen 4s. They have the nice where you can swap out the back strap. And then on different weapons like the SIGs and the Smith & Wessons, you can buy different hand grips for them sometimes. Sometimes they have the little rubber ones. But that's the thing. I don't think there really is other than like we were talking about, Mark, with the Easy Grips, there's not really a firearms hand grip made for disabled folks specifically. Like you have ones for different hand sizes, but not specifically for disabled people. So I think something like that would be really cool to see. Like Mark, when you were showing me when you were charging that Glock, the one that you're having issues with, I could definitely think of a couple of things that we could use to remedy that just by watching you charge it. Because it seemed like obviously charging it was a pain. I mean, personally, for me, taking apart of a Glock is like a pain in the butt in the first place. So I can imagine for you, yeah, it's definitely a pain. Like for me with my left side, because before I retired, I also got certified in Glock Armory, becoming a Glock armor, and as well as a SIG armor. But I haven't really been able to practice that as much since my disabilities caught up with me. But yeah, I definitely understand that. And then same with rifles too. Rifles and shotguns, they also have pistol grips you can swap out, as a lot of people know. But then again, it falls back to the same thing where they don't have anything specific for disabled folks. It's mostly all just for different hand sizes. So I think if we can get something like that produced or even analyzed, I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, I agree.
The Beretta Bobcat is also designed to make it easy to load and fire the first round, but it's 22 LR. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Could you put a kit in it and switch it out from 22 LR to a larger caliber?
No, it's a blowback, and it has that tilt-up barrel, right? So the barrel tips up, so you put the first round in, and so the first round will cock it for you.
Yeah, see, that's kind of an issue because I would want at least something a little bit more than a single shot. I mean, one shot, one kill and all, but I'd want something a little bit higher.
Oh no, it has like 8 or 9 rounds, but it's just designed so that you tilt up the barrel for the first round.
Oh, nice.
And shoot it, it cocks itself and then loads the second round.
Oh, got it. Okay, yeah, I'm not familiar with the Beretta Bobcat. I'm more of a Sig Sauer person myself. I've always been a big fan.
All right. So you brought up rifles, and those rifles and shotguns present different grip issues and different manipulation issues for people that have physical disabilities with their hands or upper body. So I've also brought, my personal AR here, and just again showing you that it is empty. If I can do that right. Okay, no magazine. Okay. So again, you've got the the pistol grip that we were just talking about here. That makes it a lot easier to control, especially if you only got one hand. The issue with the traditional, I also have a traditional bolt action rifle, so let me show you the difference there. I know this is a gun club and most people have already seen this, but just in case they haven't. So this is a bolt gun. This is also not loaded because I don't even know what ammo this thing takes. I just got it. So here the difference is, there's no grip. So I'm kind of just holding the stock and just resting this on my hand somewhere. The benefit of a pistol grip with the AR platform is that I can actually control the gun with one hand. I can literally fire this thing with one hand because I've got a pistol grip, like a handgun. And again, because this is a pistol, I've got this stock. Now, this is not the original one it came with. I had the very first version of this when I first bought this gun. Came with a little paper from the ATF saying it's legal. That's cool. This is like the fourth version of it. How many times I've actually used it as an arm brace? Probably twice, but just to see it. But it does help provide stability. Between my hand being on the pistol grip, and then holding it on my shoulder, even though you're not really supposed to do that. But it just this with no left hand, I can actually be pretty accurate with this thing. So that helps. Now, what can you do with your hand that it maybe is weak or doesn't have the fingers? So I haven't fully installed this. I just bought this. This is a BCM Gunfighter foreign assist here. There's different versions. I was looking for one that would accommodate. Sorry, with my T-shirts, it's hard. Okay, I was looking for one that would accommodate me having a thumb where I can rest my thumb. And so this version was the one that I saw, at least online from pictures, where it would be the easiest for me. They have more flat kind because for people with two hands, so you can grip it without burning yourself on a hot barrel. But I haven't tried this yet. But one of the things that would make me more accurate is being able to control the front end of the gun rather than just the back end. Ed says that last you checked, shouldering was legal, sorta, and I think the sorta is important because the thing about the arm brace is it wasn't supposed to replace a stock because stocks are illegal on pistols, and so there's a legal question there. But we're not going to get into that right now. So. Again, that doesn't mean that I can't fire something like this guy. I just do the same thing. What helps is a sling. If you have a rifle or shotgun or anything that you're going to be carrying around, hunting, whatever, you always want to have a sling. The sling helps you control. Sorry, did that wrong way. Okay, the sling helps you control the gun. I can put it around my neck. I can manipulate it. I can change the bolt with one hand if I need to. Whatever. I could also use it to wrap around my arm to give me extra stability. Now, these are techniques that anyone can use, even without a disability. But when you do have a disability, you need every advantage that you can get in terms of steadying the gun and being more accurate. I'll turn back to Nate. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Just one of the thoughts about like you were talking about ambidextrous rifles earlier, and definitely AR-15 I think is a great model for that because you can get the ejection port. From what I recall, you should be able to get a lower with an ejection port going the other way if you're a lefty, so that way you're not getting blasted in the face by the rounds as they're ejecting. But yeah, that's one of the things I was thinking about for ambidextrousness was that AR-15s are highly modifiable, which are really nice. That's the only thing I can think off the top of my head. But yeah, as far as the shooting with the rifle stuff, I think you're showing some really good different strategies to use there, Mark.
Right. Did we answer the question?
Yes, you did. And we also had one that was any good rifles or other long guns for one-handers, and I think you just answered that as well.
Yeah, I mean, AR pistols aren't really legal in some places, especially in California anymore. So that might not be an option. But you can build some pretty lightweight AR-15 platform or even featureless guns. There's a debate between going featureless in California and or just fixed magazine. I think if you've got a disability of your hand, featureless isn't the best option because you have to have that wing on the back of your grip, and that makes it harder for your stronger hand to be able to fully grip the gun. A pistol grip would be more accommodating, and so a fixed magazine might be the better option if you're in California.
And then, so are there any? So that was mostly for rifles or your modified your AR shotgun. What about?
I didn't bring that.
Oh, sorry. Alternate holds or modifications to pistols. I know you talked about the ones that are easier and harder to use for you, but do you have any modifications that you use?
The modifications that I would use are not so much in the actual gear, but in the technique. A lot of people train one-handed. I'm sure Nate can talk about that because you know, anytime you're in the military or any kind of law enforcement, you got to be able to shoot, assuming you've been shot. So there are a lot of techniques out there for primarily magazine changes. Let's see, I brought an empty mag here. So again, it's empty. I'm just using my 26 here. So you know, you're shooting. Let me there, bang, 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 and you know, it locks open, whatever. Normal people, you know, you keep it in your workspace. You grab your mag, you put it in. Well, I can't do that, right? So, or if you've been shot in your left arm, you can't do that. Oh, sorry, Karen corrected me. It's pew pew pew, not bang bang bang. So what I do, I either like I used to do this. If I had my mags on my hip, you can't really see my hip. If I had it on my hip, I would kind of bring the gun down with me and then grab it with my right hand and put it in. That's not efficient. What I do now is I put it under my armpit, use my good hand to grab, and then put it in, and you know, and then you're back in the fight. That's actually something that is taught in the military, I think, for mag reloads. Another consideration is, you know, what do you do if you have a malfunction? You know, you click and there's no pew. The normal thinking is tap, and then you rack, and then you're back. And so you know, maybe you don't have a second hand to rack the slide, or if I'm having trouble racking the slide, if I'm having trouble racking the slide or something, you know, there's other ways to rack the slide on this thing. I don't know if you could see this, but I've got a belt here, and I can rack it on my belt. I've got a shoe. I can rack it on my shoe. I've got decent balance, so I can stand up on one foot and rack it on my shoe, literally. So it's all about adapting to your situation and what your limitations are. I'm going to do what Ed said. I'm going to stop looking at chat and let Daniel ask questions.
So how do you not get yelled at for those types of behaviors when you're at a range?
So there are
like racking on your shoe and your
your
belt.
So the question I think I understand the question is sometimes these alternative ways of reloading your magazine or clearing a malfunction may result in flagging somebody nearby. It's about situational awareness. I'm always aware of who's near me, who's next to me. If there's somebody on my left or on my right, I'm going to do my best not to point the gun in those directions. It's one of the rules of safety. Now, racking something on my shoe, I just did that, and the gun was pointed down. So I'm not flagging anybody when I do that. Same with my belt. I'm not flagging anybody. Although on the belt, you're kind of close to flagging yourself. And so you just got to be aware of where that muzzle is pointing at all times. The under the armpit mag change can potentially flag somebody behind you, and you don't want that. So you just got to be aware. For instance, when I did that training I mentioned earlier with Alessandro, he put me at the very left end of the range so that I'd be able to move and train without worrying about flagging another trainee. So sometimes it's up to the instructor or RSO to be smart about where they're putting disabled folk. If you've got left side weakness or you're going to be doing more on the right side, more right hand, one-handed things, you want to ask the range or something, say, hey, put me on the very right end of the range so that I can do what I need to do without worrying about flagging somebody to my right or left or whatever the situation is. So it's working with the people that are at the range, working with the other people you're training with to make sure everybody's safe and that you can also train yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And, to build on that, I mean, it would be cool, I think, if the ranges just say the last two, on the left or the right for the last two firing positions on the left and the right, maybe for disabled folks. It might be just some of them, just aren't able to walk very far or don't have the ability to. So maybe the right side of the range, closest to the range tower, might be good for them. Or maybe they might need to do a little bit more manipulations like Mark or I, and they can go all the way down to the left end of the range. And just sit there and not so much be on their own little world, but be able to manipulate the way they need to, but safely. And that way they don't have to worry about as much as for the rest of the folks in there, or even maybe put a HESCO barrier or a berm up in between those ones, so that way those people can manipulate without having to worry about flagging somebody or potentially hurting somebody. But yeah, that's like what Mark was saying. That's definitely some techniques that we used in the military and the air marshals. Like we would do like the under the armpit, or like you were saying, under the armpit, or even charging it off your belt. Because a lot of times the pistol belts are pretty rugged, so you can use your belt to charge, or at least lock it back to the rear, so that way you can work out your malfunctions or whatever is going on. But yeah, being able to do that, I think, is definitely a part of the Second Amendment right, though, especially as disabled folks, that we should have to be able to defend ourselves. Because if we can't practice those manipulations, how are we supposed? It's just one of those things where it's like a basic functions drill. It's like, being able to do that, I think, is definitely important. Because otherwise, if we can't practice, just like I understand with some people, they don't want people, some ranges are every 2 seconds is rapid fire or something like that, or 4 seconds is rapid fire or some nonsense like that. It's like I think there's got to be an understanding, like, hey, look, my fundamentals are different. Or I need to do something different to be able to maintain, my arms and my abilities to shoot.
And I think a lot of that comes back to the individual shooter. If you've got a disability of some sort, you need some sort of accommodation, you have to speak up and let the people at the range know, hey, I've got this disability, or hey, I need this accommodation to allow me to shoot. By law, they've got to accommodate you. They can't say, no, you can't shoot here. Unless there's some legitimate safety reason, they just cannot accommodate you physically. That's a different story. But I can't really imagine a situation where range really wouldn't be able to do something to help accommodate you. I've personally haven't really done that, because I just never thought to do it. But I think now after recent trainings and everything, I'm going to start asking, hey, I want the left range. I want whatever's on the most left because I don't want anyone on my left, so that I don't have to even think about even accidentally flagging somebody. Not that that would ever happen to me, but you never know. You get tired, or maybe your good hand starts to hurt, especially reloading magazines after a while, and you start to forget about things. And so it's just nice not to have to think about that.
Yeah, I think that, and then also making sure there's nobody sitting behind you. So that way, because it's not hard for them just to push over a little bit to the right, and whoever's waiting behind you, and just be able to be out of that backside. So that way, it's two less things you got to worry about. I mean, yes, be cognizant, but it's two less things you don't have to worry about as much.
So, you guys are going through a lot of the questions in advance. I do want to mention that it is 5 minutes until our scheduled end time, but the powers that be have told me we can continue on if our panelists are okay with that. Is everybody good with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that. I only have about 17% left on my battery life, so I'll go as long as I can.
Okay. So you just kind of addressed, are there suggestions, how do you handle when an instructor has no idea how to adjust their teaching for a modification that you need? You touched on that a little bit. Do you have anything more to add to that?
Yeah, that's a difficult subject. Nate and I have been shooting for a little while. We've figured stuff out. I personally have never had somebody train me to my disability. That's all just come from me about what I need. And yeah, I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've tried different things. Some worked, some didn't work. And there's a lot of things I still need to work on. I think it comes down to the disabled person. Unfortunately, it's so different. You don't see as many disabled people in the firearm, especially physical disabilities, shooting firearms. You go to the range, most people don't see anyone who's disabled out there. And a lot of times people always make comments to me like, oh man, how are you shooting? How are you able to do all this? It's not a normal thing. So it comes down to just personally knowing what I'm able to do and what I'm not able to do, asking questions, trying things. Me personally, I've always been somebody who can look at a problem and see, what can I do to make this work. And I just train myself in that way. Recently during this pandemic, there's a trainer out in Austin, Texas named Ron Grobman who did an online class for a few of us. And, he's former IDF, that's the Israeli Defense Forces. And he gave me a lot of pointers that I hadn't even thought about, in terms of reloading and operating both rifle and pistol with one hand. And so sometimes you seek out the trainers who have experience training people who are disabled. I think anyone in the military who trains other soldiers to fight would probably have some kind of experience training people to shoot and operate weapons one-handed, because that's one of the requirements to even join the military, is be able to shoot one-handed with both hands, which is why I've never been in the military. So going back to what I said earlier, it's about individual knowing what they need. It's also about looking for instructors. I didn't do that at first. I didn't look at, what kind of instructors should I get? I never thought about that before. I'm very, as you can tell, I'm pretty bad about considering myself disabled, so I never seek out things that I should. And so you can look up, there are adaptive shooting leagues I've discovered recently. There's people have probably seen the competition shooter who has no hands and yet he's out there shooting. And so there's people like that who are very inspirational, and looking at how they train and who trains them, and seeking out those people, that might help.
I think that's some great point, Mark, and you're 100% right. A lot of it is on the instructor. And I think, honestly, like you were saying before, when you were talking about the belt reloads or the under armpit reloads, I remember some instructors I've had in the past, when I was able-bodied, they tell me like, hey man, you get that weapon reloaded and up and running again by any means necessary. And I think that's one of the things is that is a failure. Like if an instructor can't really accommodate you, I think that's more of a failure on the instructor's part to be able to break out of that that box, right? They need to be able to think outside the box. And especially even in a firearm situation, as an able-bodied person, you got to think outside the box, because it's like, okay, your arm is down, what do I do? Other arm's down, what do you do? How do I do this? How do I do that? You got to be able to think outside the box. And I think, instructing people with disabilities is a great way for an instructor to think outside the box, as far as how do I shoot? How do I reload? How do I handle my malfunctions? Right. It's like, what do I do? And I think it should give them a great pause to be like, hey, you know what? I never thought about this, but this is something I could deal with in the future. And so I think that would be something really good for some instructors to reflect on, and for something to think about when they do deal with disabled folks. And if they're not willing to, I mean, that's on them. That's their bag. They've chosen to do that. Some people are stuck in that and stuck in their ways, but that's also a failure to adapt. That's a failure to adapt their shooting styles. So, I mean, I would say learn what you can, like Mark was saying, learn what you can, and then just move on and learn your own styles and seek out those adaptive shooters and then adaptive shooter instructors. But a good instructor, I think, should be adaptive. That's just my 2 cents.
And Nate brings up a really good point, and not just for adaptive shooting, but for anyone who pays for training or goes to any kind of training, is not just pay attention, not just do the drills, but ask questions. Ask lots of questions of your instructor. That you're paying them for their time. So if you're having trouble clearing jams, if you're having trouble, getting from the holster to the target and putting it in the center mass, talk to the instructor. Don't be embarrassed. Don't worry about it, and let them look at you and see what you're doing and give you the corrections. That's what you're paying for. And it's especially important if you're trying to adapt to a shooting technique. If they're teaching you, the space here and reloading, and you're not figuring that out, how to do that without looking at your gun, ask. Say, hey, I'm having trouble. I can't seem to land the magazine. They're going to tell you to slow it down, trace your body, get the magazine in the mag well. For me, that's not a possibility. So I'm going to say, hey, instructor, what can I do instead of what you're teaching everybody? And what Nate said is right. Some instructors will be like, this is what I teach everybody, figure it out. And they're not good instructors. I think a good instructor is somebody who can adapt to the student and teach to the student's needs. So a good instructor is going to say, well, let's take a look at what you can do. And that they're going to teach you to put it in your armpit or put it between, another way is you could put it between your knees. A lot of people do that. If you're worried about flagging somebody on your left, don't put it under your, or there's somebody behind you, don't put it under your armpit. Put it between your knees facing down, and that way you're not flagging anyone. You're not flagging yourself if you've got your feet open. And then you could change your magazine that way. We'll move on to the next question unless somebody else has something to add.
So I have one specifically for Nate that I want to get out of the way before his battery dies on us. How do you handle crutches and canes in combination with self-protection?
That's a great question. I mean, there's a lot of ways we could look at that question. Could we use our crutch, our cane, as a weapon? I mean, that's one of the things that we could look at. We could also look at it as, do I have a firearm on me? Am I currently armed? So that's also got to be the question too. If I do have a cane with me, hey, I can use a cane in a different way, just like I could use a baton or an axe. Canes are pretty steady, and in fact, they also do have walking sticks. They're like survival walking sticks, if you want, which make really good canes, and they have like hammers on it at the end. You can cap with like little rubber things if you want to, but those things make pretty good walking sticks, but also a weapon. But if I'm armed and I need to draw down on somebody and I need to toss, like if I need to toss my cane, I'll toss my cane. My right leg is supportive enough where I can stand up if I need to, and be able to shoot with one leg. It's just, unfortunately for me, the left side, the base is not going to be as well. Or if I need to use the cane. Like if I'm just shooting at the range, I'll just tuck the cane underneath my belly fat and just let it sit there, kind of stay me up like I'm on my own tripod, but that helps a lot. So there's different strategies out there. It's like Mark's been saying, like, you just got to find what works for you. Like disabilities is very personal and shooting is very personal. And I think going back to the instructors is that we teach everybody different things, or excuse me, not everybody different things. We teach kind of from a cookie cutter mold, but not everybody fits that cookie cutter mold. And I think adapting that to be outside of that is very important. So as far as the cane or the crutches go, I would say you could either A, use it as a weapon to get them back, kind of like get them back from you, or get them away from you. Or if you need to, just draw down, just toss your cane on the ground and draw down on the person. That's what I would say if you need to. Or just get a survival walking stick and beat them with it, whatever you want. Those things are like made out of steel. They're pretty cool. And they even have like knives and stuff inside. You can make it into a spear if you want to. It's really, really interesting. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that was a good answer. And then some kind of related, do you have any suggestions for handgun or shotgun training for someone who has an amputated leg or just like a lack of balance due to age or other factors?
That's a really good question. Now you got to look at it from different avenues, though. Now, are you talking about combat shooting, defensive shooting, or practice shooting? And the reason I say that is because in a static environment, it's going to be, heck, you could park your have a scooter or a cane or power chair. You could park it to the side, and if you're able to get up and shoot, you can do that way and use one or two to be able to do that. But if you're in a combat situation, you're not going to have the time to get up, situate yourself, make sure everything's squared away, and just start shooting. In a situation like a combat or defensive situation, you just have to draw out and go. So it also depends on the person's balance issues, like what you're able to adapt. Like, is your right leg strong enough to hold you up and support you? Do you need to be in a power chair when you're shooting? Do you need to be in a power scooter when you're shooting? Do you need to use a walker? It also, so that you're really having to take into consideration what adaptations you already use for your disabilities and capitalizing on that. So
sorry, the question was asked by somebody who I know is an instructor. So maybe they were asking, what they can do for people. But it sounds like what you're inferring is, just have good communication with the person about what is comfortable for them and what they're able to do. Is that right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And that's a really great question posed by an instructor. And I definitely appreciate you asking that. I think the big thing would definitely be thinking about static on the range versus defensive shooting or combat shooting. Because as we know, like I said, in a static situation, you have time, to do whatever. In a combat situation or defensive situation, that's what we're practicing for. But sometimes a static situation, lures us into a false sense of complacency. So I think that would be a good thing to think about when creating those shooting strategies for that person with balance issues.
And I'll chime in. If you're the instructor, it's always a good idea to just talk to the student and ask them, like, what situation are you usually in? Do you usually use a chair? Do you usually walk and use a cane? Where are you most of the time? If you're going to be in a defensive situation, where are you going to be? And the key is to practice that. If they're always using crutches, then shift to the crutch and practice drawing while stabilizing on that crutch and move it, do what you need to do to get to a stable and effective shooting position. Even if that means going to the ground and so that you don't fall, going to the ground so you're stable and then firing, or going to your knee and stabling. So it just depends on the limitations of the individual shooter. If they're always in a chair, then it's almost like anyone else practicing, defense from a car. You're sitting down, and how do you carry when you're in a chair, and drawing from that. I didn't realize who was asking. Now I know who's asking. so the person who's asking is a friend of mine and is an instructor. So yeah, I would tell you to see where he is normally. If he's normally on that one leg and a crutch, then carry the gun on the other side. If he doesn't have use of that hand, for instance, then you've got to carry the crutch and the gun on the strong side hand, and you've got to work with that. So it again, unless unless I'm talking to the specific person, it's hard for me to say exactly what that person needs. I'm sure Nate would say the same thing. So it's completely about where are you, what works for you, and how can we help you just become better at drawing and shooting from where you normally are.
Okay, back to equipment quickly. Are revolvers a better choice if you have limited hand strength because they're easier to load, but maybe they're not easier to fire? And then also, when not loading when not using revolvers, how do you go about loading magazines? Because those can be stiff to load for fully able-bodied people. So some thoughts on loading and different types of guns.
Sure. Magazines in general. So semi-auto handguns, you can use a magazine that looks like this for almost any kind of semi-auto handgun. And it's true. These can get a little stiff and hard. It gets tiring even for normal people. They sell speed loaders for them, like Glock, for instance. This is a Glock. They'll ship one with the gun anyway. It's not the best thing, but it works. And what speed loaders do is they give you the leverage. It'll push down the spring for you, so all you have to do is feed the bullet. And if it's a good speed loader, it'll just keep pushing. You feed the bullet, it pushes until it's loaded. The problem with speed loaders is some of them most of them are made for two-handed operation. The Glock one's pretty nice because it kind of, I think I have it somewhere. It just goes over the magazine, and here it is. It looks like this. It looks like the magazine. It literally goes right over the magazine, like this. And all you do is you push this down, and it pushes the spring down. And so that's kind of the most tiring part of loading a magazine, is pushing that spring down so you can fit that next bullet in. There is a company called Range Tray that makes something that looks like this. I know my camera isn't the best. I apologize. So what happens with this guy is you put a round inside. There's a little slot in here, and then you put this down on the table, and you put the magazine into here. Boom, and it kind of just does the work for you. It's a little slower, but for somebody who has a hard time, pushing that down, it might be easier to push the magazine down onto the round versus putting the round into the magazine. So there are different. I see Karen put a link to that in the comments there. It's just one option I know. I know there are a lot of options when it comes to the speed loading. So the question, the other thing that you asked about was revolvers. I've got two different kinds here. So here, let me just. Okay, so again, it is, let me put it in frame, empty here. So this is a double action. And so is it easier? The answer is not necessarily. So this one in particular, to get this chamber out, I've got to pull this guy. And you can imagine without fingers on my hand, that's hard. So I have to literally move. I put it into my body, I pull it out, and then the chamber comes out. So is that easier? No. Not easier than simply taking a magazine and hitting a button, and then the magazine falls out. I also have this. It's a little bit of a show and tell. This is a single action revolver. It's a Ruger Super Blackhawk, a new model. Here, the chamber doesn't come out. It's one, you just got to spin and do that. Is it easy? Sure. It's real easy because all I have to do is on this side, I just have to line it up right, and then it eject around, spin, eject around, spin. It's really a slow process. So in terms of defensive uses, I would never use this gun for defense. It's got a limited round count, and changing the rounds out, you basically have one shot. You basically have the amount of rounds that are in that gun. I think it's 6. And once you're done with that, just throw the gun at them, because you're not going to have time to eject the casings and put new casings in. So for defense purposes, 100% semi-auto. If you're carrying, 100% semi-auto. There are other types of revolvers that are made for carry, and that they have clips. Clips hold the rounds for you, and then you just kind of it'll look more like this. You pop out the chamber. Hold on. Again, not easier. You pop out the chamber. You have to push this thing to get rid of the spent casings, and then you just pop the clip on top, and you're reloaded. Again, it's still not going to be as efficient as having a semi-automatic and extra magazines. Even if you have to reload the magazine, just popping in the rounds is going to be a lot easier than placing the rounds into a cylinder. So my vote would be semi-auto versus revolver in terms of defensive use. Now, when you're going to the range, it doesn't matter because you could be shooting for fun. Nate.
Yeah, I got to agree with you 100% on that. Revolvers are definitely nice, but as far, I mean, yeah, of course you could use a revolver for defense and whatnot, but there's a reason why a lot of police departments swapped over to semi-auto a long time ago. Like back in the late 80s. So there's a big reason why, and I'm 100% in agreement with that. As far as for disabilities go, like I have a few revolvers myself. They're all right, but they're not my main squeeze, so to speak. I'd rather go out and I'd shoot one of my semi-autos instead. I find they're a lot more fun. Some people do like revolver shooting, and that's their kink. I'm not gonna shut them down. I'm not gonna yuck their yum, as people say. But I'm a semi-auto person. I like shooting my semi-autos, and that's where I keep it. I feel they're better for defensive shooting, as well as just for more fun. I see a lot of people saying some stuff about Beretta. I am a SIG fanboy. I love my SIG Sauers. What can I say? I got a couple pieces of ICANN in there in my safe for them. Yeah, so I get that. Yeah, but they're not friendly on the wallet at all. Not at all. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to draw to a close here. We do have a couple questions that we didn't get to, but what I will do is I will share those on Discord and maybe Facebook too, and then you guys can respond over there, and we can share the answers publicly. But I want to close with service dogs. Do either of you have one? Do you use service dogs at all?
I don't.
Mark, sorry, go ahead.
I don't use a service dog, but I know Deb and Karen can talk more about that.
Yeah, I think they can speak on that one better. I'm actually getting my service dog in December, so I'm excited about that.
So Nate, what would a service dog do for you? How does that service dog help you?
Service dog will help me with my daily tasks, or helping me with different things like anxiety interruption, grabbing my medication, entering buildings first, and also turn the lights on if I need it to. Nightmare interruption, different things like that. So it'll help with my daily life issues and disabilities.
That's pretty amazing. That's cool that a dog can do all that.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to getting my service dog. I'm really looking forward to it in December. So I'm counting the months down.
Awesome. Thank you.
So Karen and Deb, why don't you weigh in on the service dog question?
Yeah, well, I think Deb and I were both, we both use service dogs, but for now, I haven't taken him to the range. I'm still new in my, well, I'm not quite new. I mean, I've had episodic training in firearms, but haven't constantly until now. But right now, he's not acclimated to the range. And I feel like right now he would pick up on my nervousness still around firearms and want to protect me from them. And so I think I need to get entirely comfortable with them. And so that he can see that this is part of what I'm using is part of me. And so he doesn't need to protect me from it. He needs to protect me from the other things. But Deb, do you have thoughts?
So my service dog Honor has been with me for 6.5 years, and I don't take him to the range because of other people. The investment in a service dog, and Nate is a great example of this. You know your service dog is coming in December. They are a highly trained animal. They are trained very specific to the needs of their handlers. You know, we grew up in a society where for a long time it was service dogs for the hard of hearing or those who have had hearing impairment or sight impairment. And those are pretty, constrained, but work with individuals who have PTSD or anxiety disorders, of which PTSD can have that as a component, very different. They are trained to do very specific things. And my dog, and I'll talk more about this next week, is specifically trained to keep me from being startled when a person comes up behind me. And because I swing. And so he is on a range. I would not take him to a range because I cannot trust other gun owners not to have an accident that would take out an animal that is, it has he's not a pet. He's very valuable and it takes a long time. And Nate, even after you get your dog, and yay, welcome to the service dog community, that training never stops. And Karen, the same thing. That training will never stop. But early on in his training, I did take him out to events where there were shooting. So Arlington National Cemetery with the gun salutes. And he is not gun reactive. And that's the other thing is you want to check for whether or not they're loud noise reactive.
Yeah, Deb, would we talk, I mean, this is related to what Mark was saying, but having disabled folks at one side of the range where someone can approach from their bad side or can approach them,
Right.
From a side that they can't. That's really important because a lot of us don't like someone coming up behind us and startling us. And so
Right.
being able to see that is really important.
Right. And I'll talk about this next week, but I had to quit a range because an RSO liked to watch me shoot and I would be alone on the range and I'd have a gun in hand and he'd come up right behind me. And I was like, you cannot come up behind a woman who is alone at a range every morning at the same time with a gun, putting hundreds of rounds through it. She's not there for the fun of it. She's there because she's working with a weapon. And I worried about swinging around during a fire. And that would have been, so, that training. And I think to Mark and Nate's earlier discussion, we have to train RSOs and instructors on how you accommodate individuals who they're not expecting. Because when I walk in without a dog, I don't look like, there are telltale signs, 8:30 Sunday mornings. But they're not trained to know it, and we have to teach that.
And that does go back to what we're talking about. It's part RSO. They should take the initiative to learn about people who are disabled. That's true. But you and I both know as disabled people that people aren't going to go out of their way to learn how to accommodate other people. So part of it is us going to that RSO and saying, hey, I have this issue and I need you to accommodate me by doing X or not doing Y, whatever it is. And just having that communication with the RSO, because when accidents happen is because there's a lack of communication. We know something that they don't. We know what our limitations are and they don't. And so we have to take that initiative and say, hey, Mr. RSO, you see me coming here every day, every Sunday at 8:30. There's a reason I do that. I have this condition or whatever it is. You don't even have to disclose what the condition is, but what the effect of it is. And say, you know, my condition makes it so that this happens. So I get startled if somebody comes from behind me. And so when you approach me, make sure you speak or don't touch me or whatever it is. I need you to do that for your safety and mine, to accommodate my disability.
So as a woman, and again, this is a question that I think Karen and I will really elaborate on, is we are trained to diffuse confrontation or we will be injured. And so to say to a man who is armed at the range, please don't do that, is the concern is confrontational. Can you trust him to be respectful? And I, again, could not trust this RSO. So I left, and then I joined a new range, and I had that conversation early on, but it happened to be with a woman. And so there are, you know, from the mental perspective, and it's not just the mental perspective, but it's being able to talk in a way that it's safe, in a way that they understand, you know, we're not dangerous, we're just learning a skill.
That's great. And this is exactly what we're going to be talking about next week, about how to accommodate non-physical disabilities. That's what I'll call it for now, for short. I think they were talking about maybe one more question from somebody. Ed, is there a question coming? Maybe not.
There was one. Sorry, this is Kyle, and I see Ed didn't unmute himself. Robert's daughter was in one of our other sessions, and I believe she had a question or two, if they are still around.
They're still online, but not unmuted. So, Robert, this is your daughter's chance. Otherwise, we'll pick it up next week.
We'll give Robert 10 seconds here to unmute himself if there is a question, so that we can answer it. Otherwise, we will wrap it up and pick it up with mental health issues. If there are other questions about physical disabilities or physical manipulation of the firearm, as Danielle said earlier, you can join us in our Discord chat and pop that in there, and we could talk about it. Or if we still have some time at the end of next week's panel, which I really don't know that will happen, but if there is, we can address any questions that you may have forgotten to ask. Or reach out to any one of us and just say, hey, I have this question. Obviously, we would be happy to answer it for you. So with that, and since we haven't heard from anyone else with questions, I'll hand this conversation back to Ed to wrap it up.
Well, thank you, everyone. This was awesome. This was exactly, I think, what was being asked for, ironically, by Robert's daughter during the ladies panel during National. Yes, to answer a couple questions, yes, we will do this again. I think our intention is to replace one of the weekly sessions that we have for general education with one of these panels, disability, women's issues, other issues as well. We're gonna have to figure out what the right labels are to call them, so that folks know what we're talking about. But it's definitely on our agenda. Expect these to happen about at least once a month. But next week we're going to do it again, because there were apparently so many questions that Danielle couldn't get to them all. So I know there's huge interest in this. We're going to do it again next week with you guys have already screwed up my brain with the whatever we're supposed to call it. Mark has
Disabilities
called it
and firearms.
Mark has called it one thing. Deborah called it something else. Yeah, disabilities and firearms. But next week it's not physical disabilities. How about that? It's not physical disabilities.
Karen's telling us psych, neuro-mental disabilities.
Yeah, I'm not saying that again. The non-physical disabilities is next week. But thank you all for attending. It was a great session. We had good attendance. I'll go look. It'll be up on YouTube in a public way after our audio guru has a crack at it to take away the beginning and end. But thank you all. Thanks to the panelists. And Mark, you did a great job.